An old rancher knocked on 7 doors in a single day, and every one of them turned him away. When he finally knocked on a lonely widow's door at the edge of town, she welcomed him inside, but hidden in her attic was a secret that would leave them both in tears. For 30 years, neither of them knew the truth, until one faded letter changed everything. What happened next? Watch the full story and follow our page for more unforgettable frontier tales. Before we start the story, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is right now? Silas Thornwood stood beneath the fading September sky, his weathered hand resting against the brim of his brown hat. The evening wind carried dust along the main street of Redemption Falls, and with it came a chill that settled deep into his old bones. He had knocked on 7 doors that day. 7, and every one of them had turned him away. Some never opened. Some opened only long enough to see the worn stranger standing outside before shutting again. One man had laughed outright when Silas asked if there might be work in exchange for a meal. Once, such treatment would have been unthinkable. There was a time when Silas Thornwood had been one of the most respected ranchers in the territory. His cattle grazed across 3 valleys. His horses were known for miles around. Men tipped their hats when they passed him on the road. But that had been years ago. The drought had come first. Then sickness spread through his herd. The bank called in its loans. And little by little, everything he had spent 30 years building was stripped away. His ranch, his cattle, his home, even the rocking chair that had belonged to his late wife, Catherine. Now, at 63 years of age, Silas possessed nothing but the clothes upon his back and a heart made heavy by loss. His stomach twisted with hunger. He had not enjoyed a proper meal in nearly 2 days. As he reached the edge of town, he noticed a small blue house standing apart from the others. A lantern glowed warmly in the front window. Roses climbed a wooden trellis near the porch, and a neat garden stretched alongside the fence. The place seemed alive, loved, cared for. Silas almost continued walking. His pride had suffered enough for one day. But the cold was growing stronger, and hunger was becoming difficult to ignore. Taking a slow breath, he climbed the porch steps and knocked. 3 quiet knocks. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened. The woman standing before him appeared to be near 50 years of age. Silver strands touched her dark hair, which was gathered neatly at the back of her head. Her face bore signs of hardship, yet there was kindness in her eyes. The sort of kindness Silas had nearly forgotten existed. "Good evening," she said. Silas removed his hat. "Begging your pardon, ma'am. My name is Silas Thornwood. I've fallen upon difficult circumstances. I was wondering if you might know of any work to be had in exchange for a meal, or perhaps a place in a barn for the night." The woman studied him carefully. Silas prepared himself for another rejection. Instead, she stepped aside. "Please come in, Mr. Thornwood." Silas blinked. "Ma'am?" "My name is Miriam Castellane," she replied. "Supper is nearly ready, and I believe there is more than enough for 2. For several moments, Silas simply stood there. After everything he had endured, such kindness seemed almost impossible. yet the warmth in her eyes told him it was genuine. Slowly, he entered the house. The scent of fresh bread filled the room. A stew simmered above the stove. Everything felt warm and peaceful. For the first time in many weeks, Silas felt safe. Miriam showed him a basin where he could wash and invited him to sit at the table. As they ate, conversation came naturally. Miriam asked about his life, not his failures, not his hardships, his life. And before long, Silas found himself speaking of things he had not spoken about in years. He told her about Catherine, how they had built their ranch together, how she had laughed whenever he took himself too seriously, how she had stood beside him through every challenge. Then he spoke of the drought, the disease, the foreclosure, the day strangers auctioned away everything he owned. Miriam listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging. When he finished, she rested a hand gently upon his. A man does not grieve so deeply unless he has loved deeply, she said. The word struck him harder than she could have known. For years, people had looked at him and seen only a ruined rancher. Miriam saw something else. She saw the husband, the builder, the man he once had been. That night she offered him a small room in her home. Silas protested. Miriam insisted. And for the first time in weeks, he slept beneath a proper roof. The following morning, Silas rose before dawn. Determined not to become a burden, he began working. He chopped wood, repaired a damaged section of fence, fixed loose shutters, strengthened a gate. By midday, he had accomplished more work than most men could manage in several days. When Miriam discovered what he had done, she smiled. "You needn't work yourself so hard, Mr. Thornwood." Silas leaned upon his axe. "A man must remain useful, ma'am." Days passed, then a week, then another. Silas continued helping around the property, while Miriam welcomed him as though he had always belonged there. In the evenings they sat upon the porch and watched the sun disappear beyond the western hills. They spoke of books, of faith, of family, of memories. Miriam told him about her husband Thomas, who had died from a fever 3 years earlier. She spoke of her daughter Evangeline, now married and living several territories away. Silas listened carefully. And little by little, the loneliness both had carried for so many years began to ease. One afternoon, Miriam asked him to accompany her into town. As they walked together, Silas noticed the curious looks. The townspeople greeted Miriam warmly, but many eyed him with suspicion. A stranger living beneath a widow's roof naturally invited gossip. At the mercantile, a young shopkeeper named Joseph Brightwell pulled Silas aside. "Miriam Castellan is a good woman," Joseph said quietly. "The town looks after her. If your intentions are anything less than honorable, you'll answer for it." Silas met the younger man's gaze. "Sir, that woman showed me kindness when the world had forgotten my name. I would sooner harm myself than bring harm to her." Joseph studied him for a long moment, then nodded. From that day forward, the town slowly began to change its opinion. They saw Silas working. They saw the repairs around Miriam's property. They saw the respect with which he treated her. And gradually, suspicion gave way to acceptance. Weeks became months. A quiet affection began to grow between them. Neither spoke of it, not at first. Yet it was there. In the way Miriam saved the best piece of pie for him. In the way Silas always carried the heavier burdens. in the smiles they shared, in the comfort of their evening conversations. One evening they sat watching the sunset paint the sky gold and crimson. After a long silence, Miriam spoke. "Mr. Thornwood, do you believe the Lord guides our steps?" Silas looked toward the horizon. "I should like to believe he does." Miriam smiled softly. "I prayed for many weeks before you arrived." Silas turned toward her. "For what?" "For purpose." Her eyes glistened. "For a reminder that my life still held meaning." She looked at him. "And then you knocked upon my door." Silas felt something stir deep within his chest. Neither spoke for several moments. Words seemed unnecessary. The following day, Miriam asked for his help organizing old trunks in the attic. Dust filled the air as they sorted through letters and documents collected over decades. Then suddenly Miriam froze. Her eyes fixed upon a faded letter. Her hands began trembling. "Silas!" Something in her voice made him look up immediately. "What is it?" Without speaking, she handed him the letter. Silas read the contents. The date at the top stopped him cold. The letter described a debt of $200, borrowed from a ranch hand named S. Thornwood. Memories flooded back. 30 years earlier, a desperate young couple, a crying infant. Bandits had robbed them. They had been stranded with nothing. Silas remembered giving them nearly all the money he had saved, money intended for his own future. He had never expected to see them again. Slowly, he raised his eyes. Miriam was crying. "It was us." Silas stared at her. "The young couple?" Miriam nodded. "Thomas and I." For several seconds, neither could speak. The realization was too great, too unbelievable. "We searched for you," Miriam said through tears. "Thomas wrote letters everywhere. We wished to repay what we owed." Silas lowered himself onto an old chair. The room seemed to spin around him. All these years, and somehow fate had brought them together again. Miriam opened a small tin box. Inside were papers and records. "We never spent the money meant for repayment," she explained. $200, plus interest, nearly $300 now. Silas stared in disbelief. $300. Enough to buy land, enough to begin again, enough to rebuild a future. She gently pushed the documents toward him. "It belongs to you." Silas looked at the papers, then at Miriam, then back at the papers. Finally, he pushed them away. Miriam frowned. "You do not wish to take it?" Silas smiled sadly. "No, ma'am." "But why?" For a long moment he searched for the right words. Then he found them. "I once believed a man needed land to be rich." Miriam listened. "I believed wealth could be measured in acres and cattle." His voice softened. "But I have learned otherwise." He reached for her hand. "The finest thing I have found in all my years cannot be bought." Tears filled Miriam's eyes. Silas took a deep breath. "When I arrived here, I was a broken man. Yet you welcomed me beneath your roof. You treated me with dignity when others would not." His voice trembled. "If the Lord sees fit, Mrs. Castellane, I would consider it the greatest blessing of my remaining years to spend them at your side." Miriam's tears spilled freely now. For several moments she could not speak. Then she smiled, a beautiful smile, the kind that comes only from the heart. And she placed her hand firmly in his. 3 months later, Reverend Michaels married them in a small church ceremony. The entire town attended. Even Joseph Brightwell stood proudly beside Silas. The same townspeople who had once doubted him now celebrated with genuine joy. Yet as Silas stood beside Miriam that day, none of that mattered, because after losing everything he had ever owned, he had finally found something far more precious, a place where he belonged, a woman who saw his worth, a second chance he never expected to receive. 30 years earlier, a young ranch hand had shown kindness to strangers beside a lonely road. Now, that kindness had returned to him, not as money, not as land, but as love. And in the twilight of his years, Silas Thornwood finally understood a truth that many spend their entire lives seeking. A man's greatest treasure is not what he owns. It is the hearts that welcome him home. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way till the end. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. It really helps us a lot. If you want to watch more exciting stories like this, don't forget to subscribe our page right now. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is right now? And also tell me which part of the story you liked most. And if this story touched your heart, please send some stars. Every single star gives us huge motivation to keep creating more amazing videos for you. See you in the next story. Take care of you, friends.